It was a normal afternoon at Brightwood Kindergarten. Children napped peacefully, the school was quiet, and everything seemed calm. But within hours, 32 children were gone, without a sound, without a trace. No broken windows, no alarms, just tiny blankets folded neatly as if they had vanished into thin air. This wasn't a random kidnapping. This was something far more calculated and far more terrifying. Before we dive into this shocking story, let us know where you're watching from today, and if you like this video, don't forget to subscribe. The silence in Brightwood Kindergarten was deafening. Detective Marcus Chin stood in the middle of the nap room, his experienced eyes scanning the abandoned mats where 32 children had been sleeping just 3 hours earlier. Now, all that remained were 32 small blankets, neatly folded as if the children had simply evaporated into thin air. "Run me through it again," Chin said to Oliver Reed, the art teacher who discovered the empty room. Oliver's hands trembled slightly as he gestured toward the door. "I finished my lunch break around 1:30. I was scheduled to start my art class with the Sunflower group at 2 o'clock when they woke up. I came in early to set up supplies and..." His voice cracked. They were gone. All of them. Detective Chin nodded, jotting notes in his small black book. "And the substitute teacher, Ms. Lopez, was it?" "Valerie Lopez," Oliver confirmed. "She was new. Yesterday was her first day. She was sitting right there." He pointed to a chair in the corner, watching over the children during nap time. Chen's partner, Detective Kwan, entered the room, her face grim. Security footage confirms it. At approximately 12:45, the children woke up one by one, formed a line, and followed Ms. Lopez out through the east exit. They moved in perfect order, almost robotically. "That's impossible," Oliver interjected. "These are 5-year-olds. They don't just form orderly lines without constant reminders, and they never wake up from naps without making noise." "Well, these kids did," Kwan said, showing Chin her tablet. "Look." The footage was surreal, children rising from their mats in sequence, folding their blankets, and lining up at the door with military precision. Ms. Lopez led them out, her face never visible to the camera. "No forced entry, no struggle, nothing," Chin murmured. "It's as if they were programmed." Oliver felt his chest tighten. Among those missing children was Lily, the daughter of his best friend Daniel Park. He promised to look out for her when Daniel had reluctantly enrolled her in Brightwood after his wife's death last year. "The substitute," Oliver said suddenly. "What do we know about her?" "That's the thing," Detective Kwan replied. "Valerie Lopez doesn't exist. The credentials she provided were impeccable forgeries. The address, phone number, references, all fake." "How did she get hired then?" Oliver demanded. "That's what we need to figure out," Chin said grimly. "Along with where she took 32 of Singapore's most privileged children without triggering a single alarm." Outside the kindergarten, chaos reigned. 32 sets of parents had arrived to find armed police officers and crime scene tape instead of their children. The wails of mothers and the angry shouts of fathers created a cacophony of despair that pierced Oliver's already fragile composure. He spotted Daniel pushing through the crowd, his normally composed face contorted with fear. As one of Singapore's top criminal defense attorneys, Daniel Park rarely showed emotion, but today he looked utterly broken. "Oliver." Daniel grabbed his shoulders. "Where is she? Where's Lily?" Oliver couldn't meet his friend's eyes. "I don't know, Daniel. I'm so sorry. I was on my lunch break. When I came back, they were all gone." "Gone? What do you mean gone?" "Children don't just disappear." Daniel's voice rose with each word until he was nearly shouting. Detective Chin approached them. "Mr. Park, I understand your daughter is among the missing children. I assure you we're mobilizing every resource to find them." Daniel's legal training kicked in through his panic. "What do you know so far?" As Chin briefed Daniel on the little information they had, Oliver stepped away, overwhelmed by guilt. He should have noticed something wrong about Ms. Lopez. As a former investigative photojournalist who had worked in conflict zones across Southeast Asia, he prided himself on his ability to read people. But he'd been so wrapped up in his own demons lately that he barely paid attention to the new substitute. After the incident in Myanmar 2 years ago, the one that still gave him nightmares, Oliver had retreated from photojournalism entirely. Taking the teaching position at Brightwood had been Daniel's suggestion, a way to heal while working with children whose innocence might restore his faith in humanity. Now those same children were missing, and he couldn't shake the feeling that he should have prevented it somehow. His phone buzzed with a news alert. Breaking: 32 children vanish from elite Singapore kindergarten. The nightmare was only beginning. 1 week after the disappearance, Oliver sat in his sparse apartment, walls covered with printouts from security cameras, staff records, and maps of the school grounds. Sleep had become a luxury he could no longer afford. The official investigation had hit roadblock after roadblock. Ms. Lopez had left no digital footprint. The white van spotted leaving the school grounds had stolen plates. The children's parents, among Singapore's wealthiest and most influential families, were pressuring authorities, but there was simply nothing to go on. No ransom demands had been made. Not a single child had been spotted anywhere. Oliver's phone rang. Daniel. "Any news?" Oliver asked immediately. Daniel's voice was hollow. "Nothing. The police are starting to suggest we prepare for the worst." "What does that even mean?" "My daughter is out there somewhere." Oliver closed his eyes. "I know. Listen, I've been thinking. This wasn't random. The preparation, the timing, the perfect execution, this was planned for months, maybe years." "What are you saying?" "I'm saying that Ms. Lopez, or whoever she is, targeted Brightwood specifically. She knew the layout, the schedule, the security protocols." "But why? If it's not for ransom?" Oliver hesitated. "I've been reviewing my classroom records. Every child who disappeared showed exceptional talent in something. Lily with her perfect pitch and violin skills. Ethan Wong with his photographic memory. Maya Sharma with her gymnastics." The line went silent for a moment. "You think they were selected? For what?" "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find out." After hanging up, Oliver returned to the footage he'd convinced, or rather, begged, the school's IT manager to share with him. He watched Ms. Lopez during her first and only day at Brightwood prior to the abduction. Something caught his eye. During free play time, she was subtly filming the children with what appeared to be a pen. She paid particular attention to those showing physical coordination or artistic talent. Oliver's journalistic instincts kicked in. He needed more data. The next morning, he met with Mrs. Tan, Brightwood's administrator, a severe woman in her 60s who clearly disapproved of his unconventional teaching methods, but couldn't deny his popularity with the children. "I need to see the applications for all the missing children," he said without preamble. Mrs. Tan frowned. "Those are confidential, Mr. Reed. The police have already reviewed them." "I'm not the police. I might see something they missed." "And why would that be?" Oliver leaned forward. "Because I spent 10 years documenting human trafficking networks across Southeast Asia. I know how they think, how they operate." Mrs. Tan's eyes widened slightly. "I thought you were just a photographer." "I was never just anything, Mrs. Tan. Those children need someone who's willing to look beyond conventional investigation methods." After much persuasion, she reluctantly granted him access to the digital files. Hours later, in his apartment, Oliver spotted the pattern. Every missing child had enrolled at Brightwood within the past 2 years. More significantly, every one of them had attended the same assessment day, a seemingly random Saturday last year when prospective students demonstrated their skills and aptitudes. The evaluator for that particular assessment day? A Dr. Elena Cortez, child development specialist. Oliver could find no record of her existence beyond that single day at Brightwood. "They were shopping," Oliver whispered to himself. That assessment day was an audition. He called Daniel immediately. I need you to reach out to the other parents. Ask if their children developed any new talents or skills in the past year, something they didn't have before attending Brightwood. What are you getting at? I think someone has been grooming these kids, enhancing specific talents. The substitute wasn't the beginning of this operation. She was the extraction team. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Lily, she suddenly became obsessed with balance and flexibility exercises about 6 months ago. I thought it was just something they were teaching at school. They were, but not for the reasons you think. As Oliver dug deeper, he discovered that each missing child had been assigned to at least one special enrichment session with various visiting specialists throughout the year. None of these specialists had returned for a second visit. When he brought this information to Detective Chin, the policeman looked skeptical. So you think there's an international conspiracy to, what? Train kindergartners for some nefarious purpose? This isn't a movie, Mr. Reed. With all due respect, Detective, I've seen children trafficked for far less organized operations. These kids represent millions in investment for someone. They were chosen for specific attributes and cultivated like crops. Chin sighed. Even if your theory has merit, it gives us nothing actionable. No suspects, no locations. Not yet, Oliver admitted. But it tells us what to look for: an organization with the resources to plant multiple operatives over a long period, with expertise in early childhood development, and with a specific interest in performance-related talents. That could be anyone from a cult to a government program. Exactly. So we need to expand our search parameters. Detective Chin studied Oliver thoughtfully. You're not going to let this go, are you? Would you if it was your child? No, Chin conceded. But I need to remind you that you're a civilian. Don't interfere with our investigation. Oliver nodded, but they both knew it was a promise he had no intention of keeping. 3 months passed with no significant developments. The case had faded from headlines, replaced by newer tragedies. Some parents had begun the painful process of moving forward, holding memorial services despite the absence of bodies. Daniel was not among them. He had taken an indefinite leave from his law practice to focus entirely on finding Lily. Oliver, meanwhile, had been quietly building a network. Former journalism contacts, underground informants, even a reluctant hacker who owed him a favor from an expose years ago. He created a database of similar disappearances worldwide, looking for patterns. There were disturbing similarities in cases from Thailand, Vietnam, and the Philippines. Small groups of talented children vanishing without demands for ransom. None had the scale or sophistication of the Brightwood abduction, but the methodology bore hallmarks of the same organization. You look terrible, Daniel commented when they met at a small cafe away from the city center. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, his designer suit replaced by rumpled casual clothes. You're one to talk, Oliver replied, pushing a folder across the table. Look at these. Daniel flipped through photographs of children performing in what appeared to be training facilities: gymnastics, music, dance, acrobatics. Where did you get these? An anonymous source in Bangkok. These facilities claim to be elite training academies, but they don't compete officially. Children arrive with private scholarships and minimal documentation. You think our kids might be in one of these places? Oliver shook his head. Not anymore. I had my contact check. But it's this same organization, I'm sure of it. They're creating performers. Performers for what? I don't know yet. But these places are just the pipeline. The children move through them and then disappear again. Daniel slammed his hand on the table, causing nearby patrons to stare. It's been 3 months, Oliver. If you know something concrete, we need to take it to the authorities. With what evidence? Suspicions and similar cases aren't enough. The moment we alert official channels, these places will disappear overnight. We need something definitive that links directly to our children. As if on cue, Oliver's phone buzzed with a message from his hacker contact. Check your email. Found something. The email contained a link to a video that had begun circulating on certain corners of the internet, a promotional trailer for something called the Celestial Circus. The footage showed children performing impossible feats of acrobatics and coordination, their faces obscured by elaborate makeup and masks. But Oliver recognized them immediately. The height, the builds, the distinctive movements of children he'd taught for months. And there, executing a perfect aerial cartwheel, was a girl whose graceful hands belonged unmistakably to Lily Park. "That's them," he whispered, handing the phone to Daniel. "That's our kids." Daniel's hands shook as he watched the video. "How can you be sure?" "Their faces. I know these children, Daniel. I watched them play every day for a year. That's Ethan's stance, Maya's unique tumbling style. And that's Lily's cartwheel, the one you said she'd been practicing obsessively." Daniel replayed the video 3 times before speaking. "Where's the circus?" "The video doesn't say. But look at the background. Those architectural elements are distinctively Vietnamese. My contact says the Celestial Circus is rumored to be performing in Hanoi next month." "Then that's where we're going," Daniel said, his voice hardened with determination. "The police won't authorize an international operation based on a video where we can't even see faces," Oliver warned. "I don't care about the police anymore. I care about getting my daughter back." Oliver nodded slowly. "I'll make arrangements. But Daniel, we need to be careful about who we tell. There's something else I haven't mentioned." "What?" "In every parent support group meeting, every police briefing, every search coordination effort, information gets leaked. The kidnappers always seem one step ahead, as if they're being fed intelligence about the investigation." Daniel's expression darkened. "You think there's a mole?" "I think there's more than one. This organization has infiltrated every level. That's why we need to go alone." "Who can we trust?" Oliver considered this carefully. Detective Chin seems genuine. He's been just as frustrated by the dead ends. And there's a journalist I worked with years ago, Emily Zhao. She's in Hanoi now, covering human rights issues. She could be our eyes on the ground until we arrive. "Make the calls," Daniel said. "But tell them only what they absolutely need to know." As they parted ways, Oliver couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. He took a circuitous route home, changing taxis twice and walking the final distance. In his apartment, he began packing essential items, camera equipment with specialized lenses, a satellite phone, cash in multiple currencies. At the bottom of his closet, in a locked case he hadn't opened since Myanmar, lay his most sophisticated camera gear and a small handgun he'd never used but had been unable to part with after a particularly harrowing assignment. He hoped he wouldn't need either. Hanoi's old quarter buzzed with life as Oliver and Daniel navigated its narrow streets. The humid air clung to their skin, a sharp contrast to Singapore's air-conditioned efficiency. They'd arrived separately, using different airlines and entry points before meeting at a prearranged location. Emily Zhao was waiting at a small cafe, her journalist's keen eyes missing nothing as they approached. She rose to greet them, embracing Oliver warmly. "It's been a long time," she said. "I wish I were under better circumstances." "Thank you for helping," Oliver replied, introducing Daniel. Emily's expression was sympathetic but professional. "I've been investigating child exploitation networks for years. What you described fits a pattern I've been tracking: talented children disappearing, then resurfacing in highly specialized performance capacities." She laid several photographs on the table, children performing in various venues across Southeast Asia, their faces always obscured by elaborate makeup or masks. "The Celestial Circus is relatively new," she explained. "They appeared about 2 years ago and quickly gained a reputation for extraordinary performances by young artists. They're very exclusive, invitation-only shows for wealthy patrons, diplomatic events, private functions for the elite." "How do we get in?" Daniel asked. "That's the challenge. Their next performance is in 3 days at a private estate outside the city. I've managed to secure one invitation through my contacts, but it's nearly impossible to get more on short notice." Oliver studied the invitation. "I don't need to be inside. I need vantage points to photograph the performers up close, confirm their identities. Emily nodded. I've scouted the location. There's a service entrance with minimal security and several points where you could position yourself with a telephoto lens. And me? Daniel asked. You stay at the hotel, Oliver said firmly. If these are the people I think they are, they'll have facial recognition software scanning for the children's relatives. Daniel started to protest, but Emily interrupted. He's right. Your face has been all over the news for months as Lily's father. They'll be watching for you specifically. Reluctantly, Daniel agreed to the plan. The next 2 days were spent meticulously preparing. Emily used her press credentials to gather additional information about the estate and the security protocols. Oliver modified his camera equipment to capture clear images even in low light and at extreme distances. Daniel, forced into a supporting role, channeled his frustration into creating contingency plans. On the night of the performance, Oliver positioned himself on the roof of a neighboring building, his camera trained on the elaborate tent that had been erected in the estate's garden. Through his lens, he watched as elegantly dressed guests arrived, showing distinctive red invitations. Emily, wearing an evening gown and with her press credentials carefully hidden, joined the guests. Her earpiece connected her to Oliver. I'm in position, she murmured as she accepted a champagne flute from a passing waiter. The performance begins in 20 minutes. Oliver adjusted his focus, scanning the perimeter of the tent. Security was tight but subtle, men in dark suits with earpieces, positioned strategically around the venue. What caught his attention, however, were the unmarked vans parked at the service entrance, their windows tinted. They'll extract the children immediately after the performance, he realized, speaking into his microphone. Emily, we need to find where they're keeping them before the show ends. Working on it, she replied softly, drifting toward a restricted area. The lights dimmed inside the tent, and Oliver's attention shifted to the center ring. The performance began with a breathtaking aerial display, children suspended from silk ribbons, executing complex maneuvers with inhuman precision. Even through his telephoto lens, identification was difficult. The performers wore elaborate costumes and face paint that transformed them into mythical creatures. But their movements, those were unmistakable. That's them, he whispered, recognizing Maya's distinctive flexibility and Ethan's perfect balance. There are kids. He continued photographing systematically, trying to document every performer. When Lily appeared, performing a complex routine on a suspended hoop, Daniel's voice came through the earpiece, breaking protocol. Is that her? Oliver, is that Lily? Oliver had given Daniel access to the live feed from his camera. Yes, he confirmed quietly. That's her. There was a muffled sound that might have been a sob, quickly controlled. Meanwhile, Emily had slipped behind a main tent, following a staff member through a concealed entrance. I've found the preparation area, she whispered. The children are kept in a separate structure about 50 meters behind the main tent. Heavy security. Oliver shifted his position to locate the structure, a large, windowless prefabricated building that could easily be assembled and disassembled. 2 guards stood at its only visible entrance. We need a distraction, he decided. After the performance, when they're moving the children back to that building, that's our window. But as Emily attempted to return to the audience, a security guard stopped her, requesting her invitation. When she fumbled, claiming to be looking for the restroom, he spoke rapidly into his earpiece. I've been made, she said urgently. They're suspicious. Abort Plan A. Oliver watched through his lens as 2 more guards approached Emily, their postures tense. With growing alarm, he realized their operation was compromised. Daniel, stay at the hotel, he ordered. Emily, surrender peacefully. I'll find another way. Before either could respond, a commotion erupted at the main entrance to the estate. Police vehicles with flashing lights appeared, officers pouring through the gates. What the hell? Oliver murmured, swinging his camera toward the chaos. Through his earpiece came Daniel's voice, tight with tension. "That wasn't me." The audience began evacuating. Security personnel suddenly focused on protecting their wealthy patrons. In the confusion, Oliver watched as the children were hurriedly ushered from the main tent toward the windowless building. Making a split-second decision, he abandoned his position, racing down the fire escape and toward the perimeter of the estate. The police activity had drawn most of the security to the front, leaving the service entrance vulnerable. Slipping through an unguarded gate, Oliver moved silently toward the windowless structure. He reached it just as the last of the children were being hustled inside by handlers wearing the Celestial Circus logo. Finding a maintenance door with minimal security, he used techniques learned in conflict zones to gain entry, finding himself in a dimly lit corridor. The sounds of frightened children reached him from further inside. Heart pounding, he followed the sounds to a large room where the performers were being stripped of their costumes and makeup. 32 children, appearing dazed and compliant, stood in rows as handlers efficiently prepared them for transport. Oliver immediately spotted Lily, her face now recognizable as the makeup was removed. She seemed unnaturally calm, her eyes vacant. Before he could act, a voice behind him said, "They won't recognize you, Mr. Reed." Oliver turned slowly to find himself facing a tall, elegant woman in her 50s, her silver hair pulled back in a severe bun. "Dr. Elena Cortez, I presume," he said, recognizing her from the Brightwood Assessment Day photographs. She smiled thinly. "That was one of my aliases, yes. How clever of you to track us here. Most parents give up after a few months." "These children were taken against their will," Oliver said, trying to keep her talking while he assessed possible exits. "Were they?" Dr. Cortez raised an eyebrow. "They walked out quite willingly, as I recall. No force necessary. Mind control isn't consent." She laughed softly. "Such a dramatic term. We prefer cognitive reinforcement. These children are fulfilling their extraordinary potential, Mr. Reed. Something their ordinary lives in Singapore could never offer. By performing like trained animals for the wealthy, by becoming transcendent, perfect, each one developing their unique gifts to the highest level." Her eyes gleamed with fanatical intensity. "Do you know how rare it is to find 32 genuinely gifted children in one location? Brightwood was a gold mine. Because you planted people there to identify and groom them," Oliver accused. "For years," she acknowledged. "The perfect infiltration, the perfect extraction. It would have remained perfect if not for your interference." She nodded to someone behind Oliver. Before he could turn, something struck the back of his head, and darkness claimed him. Oliver regained consciousness in what appeared to be a storage room, his hands bound with zip ties. His head throbbed where he'd been struck, but his mind was clear enough to assess his situation. The room contained theatrical equipment, costumes, props, makeup kits. From beyond the door came the sounds of urgent activity, voices issuing commands in multiple languages. "They're evacuating," he realized. The police raid, whether coincidental or connected to their operation, had spooked the Celestial Circus. They would be moving the children immediately. Testing his restraints, Oliver found them professionally applied, but not impossible to escape. Using techniques learned in hostile environments, he managed to break the zip tie against a sharp edge of metal shelving, rubbing his wrists to restore circulation. His phone and earpiece were gone, but they'd overlooked the small backup camera concealed in his boot, a habit from his journalism days that had proven useful more than once. Pressing his ear to the door, Oliver listened for movement outside. When a momentary silence fell, he eased it open and peered into the corridor. The building was largely empty now, the main activity centered around the loading dock where he could hear vehicles idling. Moving silently toward the sound, he positioned himself behind stacked equipment crates, raising his backup camera to document the scene. Children were being loaded into 3 unmarked vans, still in the days he'd observed earlier. Dr. Cortez supervised, checking names off a list as each child boarded. Oliver spotted Lily entering the second van and felt a surge of desperate determination. He couldn't take on the entire security team, but he might be able to follow the vans to their destination. A hand suddenly gripped his shoulder. Stifling a shout, he spun around to find Emily Zhao crouched beside him, a finger to her lips. "How did you escape?" he whispered. "I didn't," she murmured. The police raid was legitimate. Someone tipped off local authorities about child labor violations. In the confusion, I convinced them I was an undercover journalist working on an exposé, which isn't entirely untrue. She smiled grimly. I told them just enough to keep their cooperation without compromising our real objective. They're maintaining the perimeter, but not interfering directly until backup arrives. That won't be soon enough. They're moving the children now. Emily nodded. I saw, but I managed to plant a tracker on the first van while posing as part of the press corps documenting the raid. Oliver felt a surge of hope. We need to get this information to Daniel and Detective Chen. The Singapore authorities can coordinate with Vietnamese police for an interception. Already done, Emily confirmed. Chen is on a flight to Hanoi now. But Oliver, they're not taking the children back to Singapore. According to documents I glimpsed, they're headed for a more permanent facility in a remote area near the Chinese border. Then we follow them, Oliver decided. Can you get us transport? Emily gestured toward the perimeter. There's a motorbike waiting. One of my contacts. As they prepared to move, Oliver's gaze fell on Dr. Cortez, now entering the lead vehicle. Something about her struck him as familiar beyond their brief encounter at Brightwood. A memory teased at the edges of his consciousness, something from his past assignments. Wait, he said suddenly. I need a closer look at her. Raising his camera, he zoomed in on Dr. Cortez's face as she issued final instructions to her team. The high-resolution image confirmed his suspicion. I know her, he breathed. Different name, different hair, but that's definitely her. Who? Emily pressed. Magdalena Voss. 7 years ago, I photographed her for an exposé on a therapeutic community in Cambodia that was actually harvesting children's talents for private performances. She disappeared before authorities could arrest her. And now she's running the Celestial Circus, Emily concluded. This is bigger than we thought. The vans began moving out, taking a service road away from the police activity at the main entrance. Oliver and Emily slipped out of the building and ran toward the waiting motorbike. As they sped after the convoy, maintaining a discreet distance, Oliver's mind raced with implications. If Magdalena Voss was involved, this wasn't merely a trafficking operation. It was the culmination of a lifelong obsession with manufacturing perfect performance through psychological conditioning. His exposé years ago had only scratched the surface of her operation. Now she had evolved her methods, targeting children with even greater potential and using more sophisticated techniques. After nearly an hour of following mountain roads away from Hanoi, the convoy turned onto an unmarked dirt track that wound into dense forest. Emily killed the motorbike's engine, and they proceeded on foot, using the GPS tracker to maintain contact with the target vehicles. The track eventually opened into a cleared area where a compound stood, a main building surrounded by smaller structures, all designed to be dismantled quickly. The Celestial Circus's permanent base of operations. We need to get closer, Oliver whispered. Document everything for the authorities. As they crept toward the perimeter, Emily suddenly gripped his arm. Movement in the trees. 2 o'clock. Oliver turned to see a figure approaching stealthily through the forest. His muscles tensed, preparing for confrontation, until the figure stepped into a shaft of moonlight. Daniel, he hissed in disbelief. Daniel Park moved toward them, his expression a mixture of determination and fear. Did you really think I'd stay at the hotel while you located my daughter? How did you find us? Emily demanded. I placed my own tracker on Oliver's equipment, Daniel admitted. After Myanmar, I wasn't taking chances on you playing the hero alone. Oliver wanted to be angry, but couldn't summon the emotion. You shouldn't be here. It's too dangerous. That's my daughter in there, Daniel said simply. Now, what's the plan? Before Oliver could respond, the compound erupted in activity. Lights blazed on, illuminating the clearing as guards moved into defensive positions. They know we're here, Emily whispered urgently. A voice amplified by speakers addressed them. Mr. Reed, Ms. Zhao, Mr. Park, your presence has been noted. Please join us rather than skulking in the forest like amateurs. Magdalena Voss stood on the steps of the main building, a microphone in hand and a cold smile on her face. How does she know we're all here? Daniel whispered. A terrible suspicion formed in Oliver's mind. She's been monitoring us all along. The raid, our escape, she allowed it to happen. She wanted us to lead authorities to a location she's already planning to abandon. Very good, Mr. Reed, Boss's voice acknowledged. Your investigative instincts remain sharp. Now, shall we discuss this civilized manner, or must my security team retrieve you? Armed guards were already moving toward their position. We have no choice, Emily murmured. We go in, play for time until the authorities track us here. Oliver nodded grimly, rising to his feet with his hands visible. Daniel and Emily followed suit as guards surrounded them, confiscating their phones and equipment before escorting them toward the main building. Inside, they were brought to a large room fitted out like a performance space, with practice equipment and mirrors lining the walls. The 32 children from Brightwood stood in formation, still in their performance attire, their expressions vacant. Lily was among them, and Daniel made an instinctive move toward her before guards restrained him. She won't recognize you, Magdalena Voss said, entering behind them. None of them recognize anything from their past lives. The conditioning is quite thorough. You've brainwashed them, Oliver accused. Such an ugly word for such a beautiful process, Voss replied. I prefer to think of it as liberation, freeing extraordinary children from ordinary expectations. She approached the children, running a hand affectionately over Lily's hair. This one, for instance. Perfect pitch, exceptional spatial awareness, and a natural grace that 1 in a million children possess. Yet her father, she cast a contemptuous glance at Daniel, was channeling her toward academic achievement, wasting her physical gifts. You have no right, Daniel began, struggling against his captors. I have every right, Voss cut him off. These children were wasted in your world of standardized education and meaningless accomplishments. With me, they achieved transcendence through performance. Oliver studied the room, noting cameras in the corners. You're filming them. This isn't just about live performances. Voss smiled, very observant. The Celestial Circus is merely the public face of my operation. Our real income comes from exclusive content sold to private collectors who appreciate the perfection these children represent. It's exploitation, Emily stated flatly. It's preservation of exceptional talent, Voss countered. These children receive the finest training, nutrition, and care. They want for nothing. Except freedom, Oliver said. Except their families, their identities, their choices. Something flickered in Voss's eyes, a moment of genuine conviction. Freedom is overrated, Mr. Reed. Structure creates excellence. These children are happier here than they ever were in their chaotic former lives. Let me test that theory, Daniel challenged. Let me speak to my daughter. If she's truly happier, let her tell me herself. Voss considered this, then nodded to one of her assistants. Prepare subject 17 for interview protocol. The assistant approached Lily, attaching small electrodes to her temples and speaking quietly into her ear. Lily's vacant expression shifted subtly, her posture becoming more natural though still unnaturally poised. She has been temporarily adjusted to receive parental interaction, Voss explained. Though I warn you, her responses will disappoint you. Daniel was allowed to approach his daughter, kneeling before her with tears in his eyes. Lily? Sweetheart, it's Dad. Do you remember me? Lily's gaze focused on him, but recognition failed to materialize. "Hello," she said politely. "Are you a new teacher?" Daniel's face crumpled. "No, honey, I'm your father. We live in Singapore in our apartment with the yellow kitchen. You have a cat named Machi who sleeps on your bed every night." Lily tilted her head. "I don't have a cat. I'm an acrobat with the Celestial Circus. Dr. Voss says I'm going to be perfect." "You already are perfect," Daniel whispered, reaching for her hand. Before he could touch her, Voss signaled and Lily was moved away. "Enough demonstration. As you can see, she has adapted completely to her new reality." "This is monstrous," Emily interjected. "You've erased their identities." "I've elevated them beyond the mundane," Voss replied calmly. "These children will never experience the mediocrity that plagues ordinary lives. They will know only excellence, purpose, and the adoration of audiences worldwide." Oliver had been observing the room carefully, noting the positions of guards and potential exits. But what caught his attention now was a subtle change in the children's demeanor as Voss spoke. A few, including Ethan Wong, seemed to be fighting against their conditioning, small twitches and eye movements suggesting internal struggle. "They're not completely gone," he realized. "Somewhere beneath the programming, they're still there." A commotion outside interrupted the confrontation. One of Voss's lieutenants burst in, speaking rapidly in her ear. Her face hardened. "It seems your police friends have found us sooner than anticipated," she said. "Unfortunate. We'll need to accelerate our departure." She turned to her staff. "Prepare the children for immediate transport. Execute evacuation protocol beta." As the room erupted into activity, Oliver caught Daniel's eye, giving him a subtle nod. Daniel understood immediately. This might be their only chance. When a guard momentarily loosened his grip to receive new instructions, Daniel drove an elbow into the man's solar plexus, grabbing his weapon. Oliver simultaneously twisted free from his captor, delivering a precise strike to the throat that left the guard gasping. Emily, seizing the opportunity, slammed her head backward into the nose of the guard holding her, then dropped to sweep his legs from under him. "Get the children," Oliver shouted, diving for cover as other guards drew their weapons. Voss remained eerily calm amid the chaos. "Sedate them," she ordered. "We can't risk damage to the merchandise." Staff members moved among the children, who stood immobile despite the violence erupting around them, as if waiting for programming instructions. Daniel fought his way toward Lily, desperation lending him strength. "Lily, run," he screamed, hoping to break through her conditioning. For a heartbeat, something flickered in her eyes, confusion, recognition, fear, before a staff member pressed an injector to her neck. She crumpled immediately. "No!" Daniel roared, charging forward only to be tackled by two guards. Oliver had managed to reach a control panel near the door. Recognizing it as an emergency system, he slammed his fist against the large red button. Instantly, alarms blared and sprinklers activated, drenching the room. In the confusion, Emily managed to retrieve her phone from a guard's pocket, activating the emergency signal that would lead authorities directly to their location. "This is futile," Voss called over the chaos. "These children belong to me now. Even if you escape with them, their minds remain mine." Oliver fought his way toward her, driven by rage and determination. "You're finished, Magdalena. Your operation is exposed." Her smile was chilling. "This facility, perhaps. But the Celestial Circus has many venues, Mr. Reed. And I have many influential patrons who value discretion and excellence above all else." Before Oliver could reach her, the lights cut out, plunging the room into darkness. Emergency lighting activated moments later, revealing that Voss had vanished through a concealed exit. "Daniel, Emily," Oliver called, searching for his friends amid the chaos. Emily appeared at his side, bleeding from a cut above her eye but otherwise intact. "The police are 3 minutes out. We need to secure the children." "Where's Daniel?" A shout from across the room answered his question. Daniel had managed to reach Lily and several other children, shielding them with his body as guards converged on his position. Oliver and Emily fought their way toward him, using the sprinkler-soaked floor to slide beneath the reach of their attackers. As they reached Daniel, the sound of police sirens penetrated the building. "Hold on," Oliver urged, pulling Daniel and the unconscious Lily behind a heavy equipment case as guards fired in their direction. "Help is coming." The next few minutes passed in a blur of violence and desperation. Boss's security team, realizing they were trapped, fought with increasing ferocity. Some staff members attempted to flee with sedated children, only to be intercepted by Oliver and Emily. When Vietnamese police finally breached the building, they found a scene of chaos: unconscious guards, soaked and disoriented staff members, and 32 sedated children being protected by 3 battered but determined adults. Voss escaped, Oliver told the commanding officer as medics attended to the children. Through a hidden exit, the officer nodded grimly. "We'll find her. For now, securing the children is our priority." Daniel hadn't left Lily's side, holding her hand as medics examined her. "Will she recover?" he asked, his voice breaking. "Will she remember me?" The medic looked uncertain. "The sedative will wear off, but the psychological conditioning, we can't say yet. These children will need specialized care." As dawn broke over the compound, the full scale of Voss's operation became clear. Documents recovered from her office revealed an international network of talent scouts, corrupt officials, and wealthy patrons who funded the Celestial Circus and its affiliated training centers. Detective Chin arrived with Singaporean authorities, looking grim but determined. "We'll coordinate with international agencies," he assured Oliver. "This goes beyond a simple kidnapping case now." Oliver nodded, too exhausted for words. The adrenaline that had sustained him was fading, leaving only bone-deep weariness and the nagging certainty that their victory was incomplete. 24 hours later, in a Hanoi hospital, Oliver sat beside Daniel as they waited for news about Lily's condition. The children had been placed under observation, psychiatric specialists flown in from Singapore to begin the delicate process of evaluating the extent of their conditioning. "She opened her eyes earlier," Daniel said quietly. "She looked at me and said my name. Just once, before falling asleep again, but she knew me, Oliver." Oliver placed a hand on his friend's shoulder. "That's good. That means Voss didn't erase everything. The doctors say it will be a long road. The conditioning techniques she used were sophisticated, a combination of drugs, hypnosis, and psychological manipulation. But they believe with time and therapy. Lily's strong," Oliver assured him. "All these kids are. They survived because of that strength." Emily joined them, carrying coffee and news. "The Vietnamese authorities have put out an international alert for Voss. Interpol is involved now. They've already raided 3 affiliated facilities in Cambodia and Thailand. But no sign of her," Oliver guessed. Emily shook her head. She had contingency plans, but she's lost her infrastructure, her funding. The exposure has scared off many of her patrons. Daniel's phone buzzed with a message. He read it, his expression shifting from exhaustion to shock. "It's from Chun. They've identified the mole in the parent group, Harrison Wong, Ethan's father. He was planted years ago to monitor potential talent in Singapore's elite circles. That explains how they selected Brightwood," Oliver realized. Wong recommended it to other parents in his social circle, creating a concentration of gifted children in one location. "There's more," Daniel continued reading. "They found evidence that Voss has been operating the scheme for over 20 years. Some of her earliest acquisitions now work for her as trainers and conditioners." "A self-perpetuating cycle," Emily murmured. "Victims becoming perpetrators." Oliver's mind flashed to the vacant expressions of the performance trainers he'd seen, their mechanical precision, their absolute devotion to Voss's vision of perfection. "They never escaped her influence," he said quietly. "She raised them to continue her work." A doctor approached them, her expression cautiously optimistic. "Mr. Park, your daughter is asking for you." Daniel scrambled to his feet, hope and fear battling in his expression. "She's awake? She's speaking." "Yes, but please understand her recovery will be gradual. There may be confusion, memory gaps, emotional volatility. The psychological manipulation these children endured was extensive." "I understand," Daniel said. "I just want to see her." As Daniel followed the doctor, Oliver and Emily exchanged exhausted but relieved glances. "We did it," Emily said softly. "Not perfectly, but we got them back." "Most of them," Oliver corrected. "The documents showed at least 8 other children taken from various countries over the past year. They weren't at the compound." "Chin will find them," Emily assured him. "Now that they know what to look for, Boss's entire network will be dismantled." Oliver wasn't as confident. People like Voss don't give up easily, and she still has powerful connections. "You think she'll try again?" "I think she already has another operation in the planning stages. This wasn't a commercial enterprise for her, it was a mission. A twisted vision of perfection." Emily studied him thoughtfully. "You understand her better than most. Why is that?" Oliver hesitated, then decided truth was necessary. "Because I've seen where obsession leads. In Myanmar, I wasn't just documenting conflict, I was tracking a similar operation. Child soldiers being conditioned for perfect obedience. I got too close, exposed myself. 2 of my sources were killed." "That's why you quit photojournalism," Emily realized. "That's why I started teaching art," Oliver corrected. "I thought I could heal by surrounding myself with children's natural creativity. Instead, I led Voss directly to 32 gifted kids." "You can't blame yourself for that," Emily insisted. "And you helped save them." Before Oliver could respond, his phone buzzed with a message, an email from an unknown sender. The subject line made his blood run cold. "Perfection is a journey, not a destination." The message contained only a video file. With trembling fingers, he pressed play. Magdalena Voss's face filled the screen, her expression serene. "Mr. Reed, by now you believe you've won." A reasonable conclusion, but premature. "What you disrupted was merely one branch of my work. The Celestial Circus will continue, perhaps under a different name, in a different place, but with the same dedication to excellence." The camera pulled back to reveal her standing in what appeared to be another training facility, surrounded by children, different faces, but the same vacant expressions. These children, like the ones you rescued, have been chosen for their potential. The difference is that no one is looking for them. No one will come for them. They are the forgotten ones, the overlooked geniuses I have salvaged from orphanages and refugee camps around the world. Her smile was genuine, almost maternal. "My work is too important to be stopped by one setback, Mr. Reed. As long as there are children with extraordinary gifts being wasted in ordinary lives, I will continue. Perhaps our paths will cross again someday. Until then, I leave you with this thought. Is it truly kind to return these children to mediocrity after they've tasted perfection?" The video ended, the screen frozen on her enigmatic smile. Emily, who had watched over his shoulder, exhaled slowly. "We need to show this to the authorities." "We will," Oliver agreed, already forwarding the video to Chin. "But it won't be enough to find her." "What will?" Oliver's expression hardened with resolve. "Understanding her better than she understands herself. This isn't just about talented children for her. It's about creating a legacy, a living monument to her philosophy. She won't abandon that, no matter how dangerous it becomes." "You're going after her," Emily realized. "Even after everything." "Someone has to," Oliver said simply. "Those children she showed us, they deserve rescue as much as the ones from Brightwood." Emily nodded slowly. "You'll need help. It'll be dangerous." "So was Myanmar," she countered. "I'm a journalist, Oliver. This is the story that matters." Before they could discuss further, Daniel returned, His face transformed by tentative joy. She recognized me, he said, his voice breaking. She called me Daddy and asked about Machi. Oliver managed a genuine smile despite the weight of Voss's message. That's wonderful. How is she otherwise? Confused, frightened. She has nightmares about the perfect place and begs me not to send her back there. Daniel's expression darkened. What kind of monster does this to children? The kind who believes she's saving them, Oliver replied, thinking of Voss's video. The most dangerous kind of zealot, one who's convinced of her own righteousness. As if sensing Oliver's thoughts, Daniel's expression grew concerned. You have that look again, the one from Myanmar. What are you telling me? Briefly, Oliver explained about Voss's message and the new group of children. Daniel listened, his expression shifting from anger to determination. When Lily's stable enough to travel, I'm taking her home, he said finally. But after that, I want to help end this. Properly. No child should experience what Lily did. Oliver nodded, understanding completely. It won't be easy. Voss has resources, connections. She'll be more careful now. So will we, Daniel said firmly. You taught me that in the jungle, adaptability is survival. As they spoke, Emily was already making calls, activating her network of contacts across Southeast Asia. Information would be their most powerful weapon in the continuing battle against Voss's twisted vision. Later that evening, Oliver visited the hospital ward where the Brightwood children were being treated. Most were still sedated or confused, but a few showed signs of breaking through their conditioning. Ethan Wong recognized him immediately. Mr. Reed, he said, his voice small but clear. You found us. Oliver sat beside the boy's bed. We did. How are you feeling? Ethan's eyes darted nervously around the room. Safe, I think. Are we? Are we going home? Soon, Oliver promised. Your parents are on their way. Ethan's expression clouded. Not my father. He was one of them. I remembered during the performances. He would visit secretly, watching but never speaking to me. Oliver felt a surge of anger at Harrison Wong's betrayal of his own son. I know, but your mother had no idea. She's been searching for you tirelessly. The doctor says we were gone for 6 months, Ethan said wonderingly. It felt like forever and no time at all. That's the conditioning, Oliver explained gently. They manipulated your sense of time and memory. Ethan nodded, surprisingly composed for his age. I could feel myself forgetting things: my home, my school, my mother. But I kept this small corner in my mind where I hid things I didn't want to lose. He tapped his temple. She couldn't take everything. Oliver felt a swell of admiration for the child's resilience. That was very brave and very smart. Mr. Reed? Ethan's voice dropped to a whisper. There were others, not just from our school, children who'd been there longer. They couldn't remember anything from before. They were like robots. Do you remember where they might have been taken? Ethan shook his head, but I heard the trainers talk about the next venue. Something about mountains and water. It wasn't much, but it was a start. Oliver made a mental note to include this information in his report to Chun. Mr. Reed? Ethan asked as Oliver stood to leave. You won't let her take us again, will you? Never, Oliver promised, meaning it with every fiber of his being. She's lost this battle completely. As he left the hospital, Oliver received another message from Chin. Harrison Wong had broken under interrogation, revealing details about Voss's operation that confirmed Oliver's suspicions. The Celestial Circus was just one facet of a global network of talent exploitation, with tendrils reaching into entertainment, sports, and even government training programs. The scope was far larger than anyone had imagined. But with every piece of information, they were building a clearer picture of Voss's operation and a stronger case against her. 3 months later, Oliver stood at the back of a classroom in Brightwood Kindergarten, watching as Lily Park and 17 other returned children participated in an art therapy session. Not all had recovered fully from their ordeal. Some still suffered nightmares and anxiety, while others had fragmented memories of their captivity. But they were healing day by day, reclaiming their childhoods with the help of specialists and the fierce love of their families. Daniel entered quietly, standing beside Oliver. The doctors say Lily's making excellent progress. The physical conditioning is actually the hardest part to undo. Her body was trained to move in specific ways for so long that she does it automatically. And the psychological aspects? Daniel sighed. Better every day. She remembers most of her life before the abduction now. The nightmares are less frequent. Has she said anything more about the facility? Anything that might help locate the others? Nothing specific. But Emily's contact in Thailand may have found something. A training center near Chiang Rai that matches descriptions from several of the children. Oliver nodded, his gaze still on the classroom where Lily was carefully painting a picture of a cat, Machi, presumably. Interpol has frozen 12 accounts linked to Voss's operation. Her funding is drying up. But she's still out there, Daniel said, the words half statement, half question. For now, Oliver acknowledged, but her world is shrinking. Every day, more pieces of her network are dismantled. What he didn't share with Daniel was the latest intelligence from his sources, rumors of a new academy being established in the mountains of Vietnam, near the border with China. A place where exceptional children would be trained to achieve perfect harmony of mind and body. That battle still lay ahead. For now, watching these children reclaim their lives was victory enough. As if sensing his thoughts, Daniel clapped him on the shoulder. We're not finished, are we? Oliver shook his head. Not until every child is free. Then we continue, Daniel said simply, whatever it takes. In the classroom, Lily looked up from her painting and waved at her father, her smile still tentative but genuine. Daniel waved back, his eyes bright with unshed tears. It was a small moment of normality in lives forever changed by Magdalena Voss's twisted vision. But it was also a promise that no matter how dark the journey had been, the light of recovery, of family, of freedom would always be worth fighting for. As Oliver left Brightwood that day, his phone buzzed with a message from Emily, new information. Call me immediately. The hunt for Voss and her remaining captives was far from over. But for the first time since 32 children had vanished during nap time 6 months ago, Oliver felt genuine hope that this story, unlike so many he'd covered in his career, might eventually have a truly happy ending. Not perfect, perhaps, but real, and infinitely more valuable than Voss's cold vision of manufactured excellence could ever be. Thanks so much for watching all the way to the end. It truly means a lot. If this story gave you chills or made you think, hit that like button to help more people discover it. Let me know in the comments, what part of this case hit you the hardest? I'd love to hear your thoughts. And if you know someone who's into strange, haunting stories like this, don't forget to share it with them. Subscribe and turn on the bell so you won't miss the next mystery we unravel. Every like, comment, and share helps support this channel and keeps these stories alive. See you in the next unsolved mystery.